This is Greg Meyer, Jamie's partner at APC Leadership Collaborative. When you hear Jamie here on an Imperfect Leader podcast, I hope you pick up on what a skillful listener he is, and that he has a knack for asking hard, revealing questions. Those are skills that we try to employ with every leader we support in our work. As coaches, we ask questions that help you work out your own path forward, no matter how complex the situation is. You shouldn't have to lead alone. You deserve a great partner. Contact APC Leadership Collaborative online at apccollab.com.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. And actually, I'm pretty excited to share this with you, Jamie. Our podcast has sort of joined a network, or actually we're founding members of a network called the Podcasserole Podcast Network. We are serving up something delicious. So it's a whole group of educational podcasts. We're all coming together to really be sort of a front door for all podcasts, as well as to really celebrate each other's work, to lift each other up, maybe share guests, things like that. So these are podcasts like What School Could Be. That's Josh Rapoon's podcast. Yeah. Also, the Getting Smart podcast is a part of this network as well. And so I actually want to celebrate one of our members as well, Cheryl Lundy Swift. And Cheryl has a podcast called Literacy Matters, Empowered Conversation. And she just won Best Literary Podcast at the Black Podcasting Awards. So congratulations. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right. So
can I mention that Podcasserole is about the daddest of dad jokes possible?
There's a lot of debate about, is that really our name? And I love it. And soon you're going to hear at the beginning of our podcast, like a doorbell ringing, like ding, ding. And it's Podcasserole. Come on in.
I love the idea of cross-pollinating, cross conversations around different podcasts. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and all having this unifying theme of education. So we're taking it from the angle of the leaders who do this work. Others are looking at principals, teachers, and then specifically literacy, special education, inclusion. Nice. So it's just a great group. So anyhow, Podcasserole, come on in. Ding dong. Today we have Matt Leta, and I'm kind of excited to talk about him because it is a radically different conversation that we have typically. Typically, we're talking with leaders who are leading school districts or former leaders and their wisdom that they're sharing. We also have those sort of education adjacent folks who are talking about the work that they're doing to support leadership.
Ed professors, etc.
Right, exactly, who have walked in these shoes. So Matt is like different. I was interested in talking to him because of the work that he does in AI. Particularly this idea, and I want listeners to listen for it. He creates a company with AI as his business partner, which I think is fascinating. I listened for my question of, did you name him? Because I was kind of curious.
He did what the AI told him to do to see if it would work.
Well, and that's kind of interesting. So it made me think about, for leaders, all this work around AI about sort of moving away from not just using AI to make maybe some of the work easier, but also the potential for AI to be thought partners, thought leaders, those types of things within a school district or even in classrooms. So I want to talk about that, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd be interested to know, what would it look like for a superintendent to use AI as a thought partner?
I think they're doing it now. And so that would be kind of...
Then I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I think that they are doing that now. Before I answer that, the other thing I want people to listen for is he was, I thought, incredibly vulnerable to talk about almost going bankrupt, like losing it all. And so for leaders, I wanted to talk about on the backside, is after people have a chance to hear from it, is to think, are there things that you've pursued within your own school district that you kind of were going alone, you were so passionate about it, and you saw that you were leading and no one was following, or that you were leading and it was going so poorly that at what point did you decide to wave the white flag, or you didn't, and then you found yourself having to sort of reinvent and restart a massively, mid-course correction. Yeah. And so that, to me, I was like, man, that's kind of interesting, because I'm not sure that people are usually that honest about, this guy lost millions. So
he did.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we do this? I had all those kinds of questions. You want to know how we use AI? I'll tell you about it on the packet. How about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's listen to him. Let's go.
Sure. Fine. I don't care.
That's fine. That's usually how we do it anyway. You always say, there's listeners. I think he always says, hey, why don't we do this? Listen to the interview. And I'm like, yes.
I think that's, okay. So that's my tick. Your tick is always, can I ask you a question? I'm like, yeah, that's why we're here. Yeah,
It's a permission thing.
it's
It's a permission thing.
Oh boy. All right. You're listening to an Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiefelman.
And I'm Jamie Amonson.
We'll see you on the other side. Today on An Imperfect Leader, our guest is someone very relevant to a topic impacting educational leaders right now, AI. So my guest is Matt Leta, the founder and CEO of FutureWorks. He's an AI expert, a serial entrepreneur, and a best-selling author. Matt, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
It is a thrill to meet you. If it's okay, I want to jump right into AI in schools. But first, will you tell us about FutureWorks?
FutureWorks, in short form, FutureWorks was born as an experiment. So I am someone who has been sort of launching different tech companies since I was 19. And eventually that somehow took me into launching digital services companies. So I started an agency about 10 years ago when I was leaving from California after an exit from my product-focused company. And that company became really focused on future. So helping solve issues of the future as we saw them. So primarily environment, social justice, and education. And that was like our impact arm. And to make money to drive this kind of mission that we saw, we worked with a whole lot of Silicon Valley companies, and those went really deep into AI early. And so we did with them. And so about 9 years ago, we started implementing AI. And then about 2 years ago, part out of excitement and part out of necessity, I started a side company. And that side company was sort of a solution to an innovator's dilemma. I didn't want to fully disrupt the one that was already running and kind of struggling at the time. And I wanted to try something new, which would be a sort of AI-powered professional services company. So I made AI my partner, and we started this challenge, I think, March or April 2023. To see if I can build a business in 30 days with AI sort of telling me what to do, but also collaborating. And I would use it to help me, all sorts of things from brainstorming to building tools and so on. And the company was born, and it actually happened and then evolved from there. Today, it's a pretty fast growing company that essentially drives AI-infused next-gen digital transformation, we call it. So we sort of resolve application ecosystems, we resolve data, and enable companies to really actually use AI in a way that it sort of works in kind of like a mutualistic symbiosis with people. And that's our mindset. And we do that mostly for kind of technical industry companies, like primarily it would be manufacturing, aerospace, and so on, a bit of real estate, but we also do education. In fact, we've got a couple of very big education projects ongoing. So it's a mix.
Can you talk a little bit about any of the education programs that you're currently working with? And the reason why I ask is because much of what you're saying right now, whether it's at an individual school building or a classroom to a system-wide decision-making, AI obviously is part of the conversation that everyone is having. And so from encouraging teachers to see AI as a thought partner for kids who are working on writing their creating their thesis statement or writing their first draft and getting feedback and those types of things, and then sitting side by side with their actual teacher to get additional support as opposed to just looking at the mechanics of their writing, but actually looking at their message and their thinking, really, I think, liberates the teacher to actually do the job that they are trained to do, as opposed to, being mired in the fixing the sentence structure and things like that. And so then I think I go up a level to school wide, and you had said something where you said everything that can be automated will be automated. Yeah. And so I thought about that. And so I thought, how might this futuristic impact, impact the education role, but also the leader role that one has in a school system. So not just teaching and learning, but also leading. That goes back to my initial, sorry for the sort of monologue. Are you able to talk a little bit about the sort of school education projects that you're working on? And then in light of, some of the things that I was just asking.
Sure. Yes. I mean, it's probably not in the book or anywhere, but I'm actually married to someone who's at Harvard Education, and she has an AI platform for education. And so I get a lot of knowledge about this.
Advertise it. What is it? What is it? What is it called?
It's called Maca. Maca, it's like a whole project. She's previously built a big education nonprofit that has educated like 14 million children literacy. And now they're working.
That's a big number.
Something big number. I mean, incredible. It's worked on this for 10 years.
Amazing.
And now they're working on something called Maca Media. It's kind of in a stealth, but essentially it will help them It will help certify, analyze, and shape content that is developmentally good for children. So if you think of, the content that's currently optimized for dopamine on YouTube and so on, it's probably not good for children. So they're working to fix it. In fact, they were showcased.
Yes. So disrupting the variable ratio reinforcement schedule, right? So we're gonna make learning addictive, or the good stuff, instead of what casinos and social media use. Yeah.
They've got like a whole model for this and so on. And I'm fairly close to the progress of this also.
How cool.
We get a lot of updates. So there is one part that's our work, and the second part that's this. And I can see that there is a lot of, there's 1,000 opinions. Should we ban this? Should we include this? Now there is, the executive order to teach children AI from the beginning, which makes sense. And, there is, I think, someone that wants repayment of tuition now because the professor used AI to do something.
I read that this past weekend. Yeah, I read that.
All this confusion and madness in every direction, and also professors.
Although one argues also, then let's rethink what you were teaching and how you were teaching, because if it can be just simply replaced, then potentially you've done some very low level instruction.
Yeah.
So what are the projects? What is it? What are the learning goals? And then how are you going to get there in a more experiential or project-based way, as opposed to just lecturing? Because I can just get that from ChatGPT.
Yeah, and then there's the academia side of it, where a lot of papers are written or co-written by AI, and there are phenomena like digital fossils that are fake information that are just spread throughout and so on. It's just all fascinating to me. But when it comes to our work, we are working currently on sort of two of the projects. One is kind of like a Siri for classrooms, kind of, ever-present agent that's able to co-teach in a classroom. This is in fact a relationship that started a long time ago. And then another one is an optimization of operations for a fairly large company that organizes education programs in America. I'm not going to name them. When the case studies are up, they will be up.
When they're ready, they'll be ready. We'll be excited to tell people. But that's a really interesting idea. We talk about co-teaching models. And so really what you're proposing is really sort of breaking into creating one of the things that schools are really required to, one of the things we always say is it's our job to keep you safe. It's your job to help us do that. And it's because safety, when we become in loco parentis, we're in charge and making sure that children are safe. So that extends into the classroom. So when you're creating something like a Siri to be a co-teacher or support, you have to create it in a bounds that that children are not going to access inappropriate material, all those kind of things that might sink ed tech. And so it sounds like that's what you're working on, is how to create this incredible thought partner within the confines and the support and the safety net, I guess, and doing it responsibly. How neat.
Yeah, that's one thing. And the second thing is, I'm sure if there are many teachers or people in education listening to this, they're like, ew, I don't want something speaking in the classroom. It's uncomfortable. And, it's weird. It's like, is this the future we want? And so I think a big part of all of those projects that touch on experience, on our personal experience or our work, is comfort, right? Like the adoption of AI really, from AI perspective, is kind of simple. It's extremely powerful already. It's there. It can do a lot. But the limiting factor really is the comfort of us, of people, like our team.
Sure.
If you're running an education organization, a lot of your employees are feeling threatened by this, right? And that misunderstanding. How do we even start getting them on board, getting them excited, and moving them from this kind of, from early awareness to championship, right? It's a long path. And that's something we grapple with a lot. So it's the security, and I would say, it not, saying wrong things, that is very easily solvable, right? That is not really a big issue anymore. Hallucinations can be still a bit of a problem, but honestly, if you set it up properly, they're very little of an issue right now. But the big thing for us to actually get those systems to work and be there, for example, for this voice to be in the classroom, the teacher needs to be comfortable and the parents of the kids need to be comfortable with this and so on. So how do we, bridge that is the important.
I have many ideas on how to do
embrace it.
One of the things also, if you haven't already engaged with ISTE, the organization that really is the thought leader and the educational leader not just nationwide, but globally in terms of training teachers to leverage technology in their
Mhm.
classrooms. They have cohorts that are regularly meeting to think about it's a year-long process for how they will integrate technology into their classrooms. And so you already have your super users. And as you know, with any kind of change, it isn't something that can just be done top down. It is, how do you find those who are really interested in being your trailblazers and allow them to pilot and engage? So that would be my one advice in terms of how do you engage education and to maybe lower that affective filter of being so scared about making that mistake.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us on An Imperfect Leader, our guest today is Matt Leta, the founder and CEO of FutureWorks. Matt, I'm going to go right to the question I ask every leader who joins the program. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
I think to be a good leader, you need to be a steward in a way. And in fact, I think good leadership comes out from the realization that you're imperfect. It's sort of self-fulfilling, if you will, in that way. So that's how I would understand that. And yeah, I think we need to recognize that we are not perfect. As primarily and ideally, we're here to coach and let others flourish and show the way, maybe, and throw things at ourselves and maybe charge ahead and carve the path out in some cases, and especially on the more entrepreneurial side with smaller organizations or faster growing organizations or during change, like now with AI. And we need to be the person that uses AI for others to use it. But yeah, I think that there's sort of power in recognition that we are not perfect, and every leader is imperfect in their own way.
We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. And my guest today is Matt Leta, the founder and CEO of FutureWorks. Now, in this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision they made and then what they learned from it. So I'm super excited about this. Matt, what happened?
I think, as we started our conversation with FutureWorks, so actually there is a very fitting story there. My previous company, which I started about 10 years ago, was going really well. I've been traveling the world and building things, doing a lot of impact, I built this whole side community of people who driving change in education, social justice, environment, and I was quite passionate, but that was a side thing. Eventually, the main company started going, we doubled every year for 7 years. And so the power of exponential made it pretty big. And, and I was,
I saw your website. Here you were with all these luminaries, the world's most successful leaders. Whoa.
At times, yeah. And so we've had financially, we were well off, we were fulfilling our mission. And I started getting bored. And I wanted to kind of further my mission. So I kind of became obsessed with this, like raising $100 million to move into like high impact initiatives in climate and environment, because that issue became really important to me. And so I focused on this so much that I decided to delegate this entire company. And I built a leadership, kind of like management group. I think the whole total team was like just about 80 people. And I built like a kind of leadership team. I had a partner who would then step in to run it. And I focused on this dream of mine to build this fund and to drive impacts, much more than I could have before. And at the same time, the market sort of tumbled. It was the correction in 2022, and it's definitely affected the space we were in, which was helping build startups and innovate for companies. Not only budgets got frozen, and so that company got into a lot of trouble. I mean, going from like multi-million revenues and stuff to essentially the team coming to me and telling me we're gonna go bankrupt in 3 months. And I was really involved with this new thing, and that's sort of introduced the hardest period in my life. I think that was the last 2 years, and I had to solve it somehow for myself. And I made a tough decision to pause the climate project, and I sort of reconstructed it over time into something else. But I came back and I realized that, now with AI and everything that's coming, I cannot make a bet on the future of professional services, which is the industry that this company is in. Things are changing and will be changing a lot. And we've had enough visibility into this over the past years to know how the exponentials work in this space. And so I decided to start this experiment. And like I mentioned in the beginning, the experiment was out of excitement, part out of necessity, right? And so I started this experiment to sort of quickly drive towards revenues and so on, and that worked. And it worked as this like AI sort of powered AI. It wasn't even a term at the time, I don't think, but the AI native. It became one of the first AI native companies doing stuff like that. And I don't actually know any other, but I'm sure there are some. And we ended up, kind of overcoming a lot of those hurdles and building a business that has now become much stronger, has gone up market, working with much bigger organizations, solving big problems. And in that, I had a lot of realizations in this period and lessons that I took from it. Firstly, I was obviously chasing shiny objects, which happens to people at a certain level. And I think the big thing I learned from it is like not to take things for granted as much. And if I'm, going on my entrepreneurial adventures, now they need to contribute back into the main company and not go elsewhere. And I've really wanted to understand what's going on. Markets started changing in the direction. We were all focused on the future for many years. I had an organization called Future Horizon, which is the nonprofit. We've been in prediction markets. We've built AI systems for prediction and analytics of market. And suddenly at that time, what happened in the markets was like completely unpredicted. Like our friend lost billions of dollars even who we worked with, and they had like analysts and so on. We were just shocked, right? And I concluded that predicting trends, looking forward to the future, trying to guess what the future may hold is maybe not a modality that we will be able to use for much longer. And so I started trying to understand it. And so I started interviewing people. I talked to, by now, over 200 people, trying to understand how can we navigate around that? What does it mean? How do we embrace AI to help us with this and so on? And that became this kind of database of knowledge that I had for myself. And eventually someone suggested that I write a book about it. So I wrote my first book and published it last year. It's the Leap Guide. And then I went further, kept asking, kept looking, digging, and then I published the 100X, which is the book that's just came out. And both of those are essentially some of the outcome of this, search for what is coming and how do we handle that. And 100X, in fact, the original title was Future Proof, but then I learned that there are 15 books called Future Proof. And so I had to change it. But the mindset is, how do we actually secure our own careers, our work, our companies, our organizations in order to, not just survive, but thrive in this faster and faster changing landscape. Right. The change, it feels like the change is now wild because we've got, changing presidency and whatnot and different friction.
Right. And the pendulum seems to swing like aggressively and abruptly. And forcing entrepreneurs and even stable, long-standing companies to sort of figure out this new landscape. If I can interrupt for a quick second, one of the things I'm curious about as I typically ask what got overlooked. And as you were telling your personal story, which by the way, it's so difficult often to have to relive those low moments when all of a sudden you've got people coming to you and saying, we're going to have to lay off this many people, or we only got 3 months worth of revenue left. And first I want to say thank you for being willing to talk through that. And so initially my thought was, what got overlooked was he was looking towards the future without considering the immediate present as well, and recognizing he needed to balance both. You have to have wanting to look through your windshield, but also know, what's in your rearview mirror, or where you are right now, who's alongside you, if I could use the car driving as a metaphor. And then it seemed to me that what got overlooked was a desire to pursue a personal passion because it would have a profound impact globally in terms of environmental issues and things like that. And then it sounded like what might have gotten overlooked was recognizing that the playbook that everyone has been using is no longer relevant, and that you truly, whether it's through your book 100X or just through your own personal experiences and conversations, that what may have gotten overlooked was pausing and seeing that things were changing and they would never be the same. I don't know, any one of those three seem like an overlooked sort of moment, or have I totally missed it?
No, I think you're spot on. I think those are some of the elements. I think the one that's important and maybe most relevant for the audience here is what I overlooked at the time was diligent control of metrics and the state of truth within that company. Because I was not, I removed myself from the leadership role, but I was still the main owner of the company. And I allowed myself to overlook reporting that was essentially not true due to many errors made. And so I had, I believed in
So are you saying you were relying on metrics that were provided to you, but they were not genuine?
They were not. No, we had like a control company in charge of financial control and stuff like that. That was completely. They were
Oh,
so
wow.
off.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so,
Well,
like
that's
a lot
probably
of.
the most yeah, that's probably the most troubling overlooking
And we were
as you
paying
look
them a
back.
lot of money. So I'm incredibly diligent now as to who and how is everything reported, much more hands-on in management of metrics all the time. And that was my big lesson at the time. That company operated because the market was growing and we were doing good work. And it just kept always growing, doubling every year. But we had no systems. I think systems creation became very important. Following a system like EOS, a very good framework for running teams in a company. That's something that I started implementing from there. I think this was really like the big part of it and the big learning. And also, who is leading? Is a person that's like 80% good enough in my mind? Are they actually good enough to
Right.
be in a leadership position?
That
So
sort of
probably not.
answers the question about what did you learn about relationships. So in
Yeah.
terms of, and when you talk about relationships, I think it also extends to trust. And so
Yeah.
you were incredibly trusting of individuals who were put in roles, or you
Yeah.
believed at that time that the 80% was enough, and maybe it's not.
I'm still very trusting, but I think I've learned that
That's
like
good. Sometimes
trust
we
is
become
given and
jaded.
removed, and
Yeah.
it should be controlled dynamically and clearly communicated, And I think it's incredibly important, by the way, to communicate when you trust someone. Just to say it. It makes them much more, again, going back to skipping steps, makes them much more likely to succeed because they feel empowered to do it. They feel like, okay, they trust me to do it, and maybe I've got this, because people question themselves all the time. But it also conversely, is just saying we've lost my trust, this sort of, high degree of transparency and candor became really important as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're really speaking to the way that one gets and receives feedback as well. Samir Goyal, who is an entrepreneur, he and his partner Wemimo, they started Isuzu, ESUSU, and one of the pieces in his conversation with us was you have to be incredibly clear with people where you stand with them. Otherwise, they draw different conclusions of things are going fine until they
Yeah.
receive feedback that things weren't fine. And so he learned when they were just 3 employees, maybe things could slide a little bit. When they were at 300 employees, you really had to be clear right at the beginning. Otherwise, what seems like a very narrow conflict all of a sudden becomes a much bigger chasm as people continue down their path. I imagine you.
Yeah, it's like the power of
something-
leverage. You get more people or more AI now to have more leverage, which allows you to build a bigger organization, have more revenues, profits, whatnot. But also that leverage applies to it amplifies other aspects.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
What frustrated you?
Oh my God.
Well, remember, we only have about 5 minutes left, so we're not. I don't want a laundry list, but sort of thinking back on this.
Yeah, primarily, I went deep. I was lucky in a way that I had a friend within our community, or someone I knew to some degree, who is an excellent executive coach. And she kind of noticed it. And she sort of like herself suggested, hey, maybe we should chat. And so she was kind enough to help me sort of process a lot of my frustration. My main frustration was with me, why would I let some things like that happen? I mean, personally, my net worth, whether, with big parts of it being paper, but net worth went down,
Considerably.
8 figures, like a lot. I went to zero at one point. And so, it was a big collapse, right, in my life. And I had to navigate because many other things happened. A lot of my investments went under and so on because this was big tech wipeout, right? And so I had to navigate that. And of course, there was a lot of, I was blaming myself for a lot of this and process things. And I didn't want to repeat it again in case it's a pattern of what I did. So I went on this introspection path. And there was a lot of frustration that I had with myself, a lot of frustration that I had with people who I trusted as well to, report on things and handle things that were not handled. But primarily I was blaming myself a lot and I had to process that. It took me a while, but I was able to, I think, come out stronger, a lot stronger out of this frustration. So if I was to name one thing that frustrated me was a sense that I had a certain detachment of reality from reality driven by my own sort of dream and push. And that's, people call it like this distortion field that can sometimes break through and you make it happen if you get lucky. But in this case, that did not work out. And so I was able to, I got a pretty strong lesson out of it. And then I had to navigate out of
That is
that
huge.
lane. Yeah.
In the end, what would you say was something that was good that came out of this situation?
A lot of good things came out. I mean, if I was to choose, I would probably not choose this particular path again. But you learn, from every single organization like that. And I've been saying that, previously I've run businesses on vibes. Right? They kind of happened. I never did anything remotely related to, learning how to run business other than my own experience and some advisors. But this time I had coaching, and this time I truly went deep on understanding a lot of elements of it. And I think just my fundamentals, I've read, I don't know, like 80 plus books. Like I think the fundamental knowledge that I have now on how to run business, what's needed, how to make it work, how to deal with people, how to also embrace AI and innovation on those new things. I think this will just pay dividends for the rest of my life. And it was actually the biggest learning experience of my life, I would say, the last 2 years. I've been telling people this is my MBA, even though I'm not doing an MBA, right? It's my time to actually show to myself that I can, if I can recover from something like that, means that I can probably build businesses. And so that's been my challenge.
Our guest today was Matt Leta, the founder and CEO and the author of 100X. And, one of the things that as I was writing notes as we were talking, at one point I wrote, leaders project confidence, and they have to because they carry the stress of others that they lead. And what you've taught us today is the value of introspection and vulnerability really is a model for others. And then at the end, you really tied it up for me, which is put into this package of don't underestimate the value of coaching and mentoring and knowing that even though you're leading this vision, that you ought not to think that you have to do it alone, that there are going to be people who will maybe point out those blind spots or to challenge your thinking and to really elevate where you're trying to go. So thank you so much for giving me time today, Matt. This was just so much fun.
My pleasure. I'll just add one more thing.
Please do.
A lot of people now use AI as their coach, and this became incredibly available. And to my test and to many others that I know, and we have a lot of coaches in our community, it just works. It really seems to work. I'm hearing more and more stories of people kind of turning their life up, forward, building their careers better and so on. And it's as simple as prompting ChatGPT well and keeping coming back to that chat. And very simple, very accessible right now. So for anyone who's looking at it, it's probably not going to replace a professional coach, but for a day-to-day sort of solving problems and advice, it actually is incredible. And I think that alone will have a great impact on humanity when it's distributed.
Awesome. Can I ask one last question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your AI partner, as you were beginning, did you give your AI partner a name?
No, I did not. Just partner.
Just partner.
Yeah, but I gave it a voice.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So it had, because it's still on X and Medium. You can find, because I documented it every day. So every day you can see the message, the conversations.
I was wondering if it had a name. Yeah.
And,
but it has a voice. What is the voice most similarly, is it an actor or a name or, yeah.
The writing of Hunter S. Thompson. Because it's ridiculous. Like the Gonzo journalist.
So amazing.
So you can see it. You can see it in the responses, how it talks. It's really funny.
Oh, how fun. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, Jamie, we are back. Before we start, we started the actual conversation as people were coming in to listen, even before our conversation, a bit of a new intro. We had your partner, Greg Meyer, welcome people and talk a little bit about the work that APC does. And so they should keep listening for that. There'll be different ones each month, but I'm super excited that we're able to sort of count on that sponsorship as part of what keeps us going as a podcast and to really encourage people to learn more about you all.
Oh, we would be honored if there's listeners and or former people that have been on the podcast who want to know more about what educational coaching looks like and how we support systems and districts to basically meet their goals. I would love to talk about it. I think Greg is great at that. He is quite polished at speaking straight to the camera.
He had a good tight 30 seconds.
Yeah, current state senator. He's pretty good at it.
I guess he's got all right, fine. He's got the practice. All right. So let's talk about my conversation.
Yeah, let's talk about Matt Leta. I mean, can we go back to the question that we opened with about? I mean, how about this? We'll start with you. Did you ever use AI in any way as a superintendent? Was it something you had access to?
I would say not in the way that it's now widely available, right? I mean, the way
Right.
that I think superintendents are thinking about, oh, I'm having this board meeting coming up. Here's my presentation. Can you quickly look for ways that I might be able to engage different types of learners? Or how can I consider the kinds of questions I might get from a more conservative community member? Or what might be ways that a progressive member of my community who comes and gives public comment, what should I be thinking about in terms of what question might I get? I mean, those types of thought partner is
Yeah.
definitely how people are using it. I just know it. They will also, without using personally identifiable information, they'll drop in, here are the expenses over the last 12 years or the last 12 months, sorry, and say, okay, how am I trending? What are the areas that I'm spending too much on? What might be some areas that I can pull back from? If I'm having a conversation with my CFO about zero-based budgeting, how might I engage in that conversation? So I think they really are beginning to use AI as that kind of thought partner that may not have existed previously.
I see. I haven't thought about using it that way as a leader. And it always comes to me after I've struggled for a while in my own thinking, when when the brainstorm doesn't lead me anywhere. And what I would usually call is, in essence, a writer's block, or a thought block. I'm like, I'm pausing for a moment. And I'm not sure how to think about it. Then I'm like, what if I asked AI this question? What would come out? And then that usually just instantly just gets me going again. Then I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. That takes me to a new thing. It's almost like a jump start.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, people who do systems thinking and understand the concept of stock and flow maps or a reinforcing loop, and they want to sort of understand, gosh, this is what I'm struggling with. How can I break that? What might be 5 options that could help me break this sort of loop that I'm stuck in? And yeah, I mean, it goes back to thought partner for me. So
Interesting.
So now there are companies out there now who you can put every one of your employees' birthdays in, and it will write them personalized birthday notes because you type in just a few things about that person, and it will send them a note on their birthday. I mean, people are starting to use this in different ways. There are those who want to feed their letters to a constituent through AI first and just ask it to soften the language because they know that they come across as abrupt, assertive in their emails. So that to me is also kind of interesting. So what Matt is doing is he built an entire company using AI, and he documented it all on Twitter. I refuse to call it the other, so he did it on Twitter, and invited people to listen to those conversations and be a part of that. So I just think all of that was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was a really interesting idea, and I'm like, I wonder what it would tell me as a leader of APC Leadership Collaborative, what it would tell me to do. There are some loops that we're stuck in and struggling through in this moment. And I'm like, that'd be interesting to see what it would say. I think it would be really interesting to partner with AI in the way in which Matt Leta did, and that is get as a thought partner. I tend to use it as a quick solution, not so much as a partner per se. Someone.
I think he's taking it to
something
almost the next level. He's using it as a collaborator. I use it as a thought partner, and then I'm generating and thinking about what I want to do. Or I've seen colleagues who are doing that. You are taking it one level down, which is doing some fairly simple tasks. And I think he's asking it to be a collaborator, almost I don't know if he called it an equal, but I got a sense that he was treating it as a real partner.
I mean, that led to the comment he made that I think is super interesting, and I want to read it, where he said, I'm going to pull it up here. I have it. He says, when it comes to our work, we're working on a couple of different projects. One is a series for the classroom, and one is a representative agent that's able to co-teach the classroom. He says it's extremely powerful already. It can do a lot, but the limiting factor is the comfort of us, of people on our team, the employees feeling threatened or misunderstanding. He said, how do we even start getting them on board, getting them excited and moving them from early awareness to championing it? And that
I think I talked a little bit about, I hadn't thought about using it as sort of a teaching assistant.
Yeah. So I want to talk about two things. One, how do you feel about that? The idea of AI as a co-teacher. And two, I want to talk about this idea of how do you move it? I 100% believe there is fear around it. My son, who's in college, as the listeners know, I talk about Joaquin a lot, has courses where it's still, the professor says no laptops, just blue books. And so they have to still buy blue books from the
I know it's interesting
Well, the
because they're so
student
worried
union.
about cheating. But I would
Correct.
say, yeah, and so I would say, so in that class, they don't seem to think that it's needed. You asked what would I think about it? I would say, because I'm preparing for this conversation I'm going to have with a large organization, I'm giving this speech, and I am talking about the mistakes that you and I have heard over and over in our conversations with guests, which is,
Yeah.
have you made decisions with the people most impacted? Have you made a declaration that then blows up in your face because you had no buy-in, or, as we've come to learn over time, is to say any commitment? Because if you can buy in, you can be bought out, as Avis Williams reminds us. So it is interesting to maybe apply the same thinking here. I am okay with it as long as it becomes a conversation of, this is a grade level or a classroom or a school that really wants to go through this sort of iterative process. It aligns with their compelling purpose of trying to meet the needs of children, if that's what their compelling purpose is. And they think that, a co-teacher using AI could potentially help us leverage where we have not had the opportunities in the past. And so maybe there's one table of kids where I can say, hey, Alexa, or whatever it is that's doing it, and say, this group is working on this. Would you give them a few examples? They're going to submit some work to you. Please give them some responses. And then also email me what your report is on that. That could be kind of interesting to see how that works, what that looks like. Frightening, maybe to some degree. And so this is about human trust and comfort. It's not about technology in that sense.
Can I add to that idea?
Please.
I love this from this perspective. As someone who talks about teaching a lot and supporting teachers to get better at teaching and supporting leaders to lead that, the thing that people fear, teachers often fear, not all, this is many or not, but in fact, I don't know whether it's the majority or not. I should probably say that. But the way you get people to learn something is have them talk to each other about it. So the best way for kids to take up new information is students to talk to students about the learning, not teachers to talk to students about the learning. This is why, as you go to do your talk, I know that you're going to do this, that you'll have them turn and talk. You'll have them make meaning along the way. That's how the human brain what's the phrase, chunk and chew. You've got to chunk the information so that then people can chew on it and make meaning for themselves. That's how they take it up. And so this example with Alexa seems like such a great tool to have students learn for themselves. Independent learning.
I would say almost where students and teachers are learning together and then presenting almost like a science fair. Remember Doug Reeves, when he was on the program, he talked about the best learning is when teachers are doing this work alongside their students and then they come and present to each other and they walk around the cafeteria like a science fair where they talk about what they've done together, almost like an action research kind of thing. Because
I don't remember Doug Reeves talking about this at all.
Oh, it's really
so
cool.
fascinating. I was probably listened to it and commented on it.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
So cool. And then Sherry Kami, who was in season 1, who was the former AASA president who just retired from the Baldwin Public Schools in Long Island. She had talked about you can't start with a decree. If you decree something, it's dead on arrival kind of thing, right? So a declaration, nope. And so how do you move from awareness of sort of talking about this to actually like some confidence of trying it? And then do these people then become your champions for it?
Yeah, he said, what was the words? Yeah, exactly. From awareness to championing. I thought what I wrote there in that comment, my notes was, oh, I know a little something about that. You're talking about group dynamic. You're talking about how you get the positive group dynamic toward collective efficacy. This is the key specifically to adult learning and distributed leadership. oftentimes people think distributed leadership is assigning people stuff. But
Yes, I once had a principal say, "No, I believe in shared leadership. You tell me what to do, and then I'll share it out with other." What? So distributed leadership? Yeah, no, I'll just here's the checklist. I need you to go pick up that. I need you to go do this. No,
exactly.
Yeah.
We have a choir performance, a football game, and I need you to go to that and go to this.
Right, exactly. I need some people to sign up. I need someone to work on the programs. Yeah. Lord.
Distributed there. So I thought that was that idea of co-teaching was super interesting. After listening to Matt Leta, I would like to meet his wife. He talked about being close to his wife and his wife also running an AI focused organization, but specifically for education and looking
right.
to overturn or shift the algorithm from the dopamine model that basically all social media uses. I thought this was riveting. I want to know what
she's
how
studying
that
at
works.
Harvard. And another one of our previous guests, Jennifer Cheatham, I asked Jennifer if she wouldn't mind connecting with her as well. So maybe there is some good
excellent.
learning. So I
Excellent.
find that, our podcast is about trying to connect people to a network so that you recognize you're not alone and that the leader longevity is only achieved if we feel like we've got relationship and connection.
Yeah. And those kind of things are so riveting to me. I love.
And so
I
someone
love
could
when we
say,
get
and
connected
so
to
how does AI
innovation.
do that? I go, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But it turns out
That's
she
why
does.
the human-centered piece of it is human to human. What you talked about in terms of dialogue, talking and learning together. That is the most important.
Well, as it relates to moving from awareness to championing, that's exactly what it is. You're talking about building people's sense of community around a common goal. That we're back to we are one. Here we are back to we are one. Well, go grab your ukulele. It matters. The North Star matters. The clarity of outcome matters. Getting things done and putting out fires, though important, doesn't work if you aren't clear about what it is that everyone is clear about what it is you're all up to. And it can't be, to your point, can't be a decree.
So you see, this conversation that I had with Matt Leta has served to be a really interesting conversation for us. So I thought all in all, a good week, a good conversation, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Before we close,
Jesus.
No, you can end there. We can end there. We can totally end there.
You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents in Leadership podcast. And look, we want to know how you're using AI. So you can give us 5 stars and then maybe put a little comment. Anyhow, thanks so much. See you next week, Jamie.
Yeah, see you next week.